That's what I saw.
This one? The one I had. You can pull that off.
I take got notarized. Got notarized in your closet.
Seconds.
I can't hear you. We're gonna go. Good evening. We're called to order the Centennial School District School Board Committee of the Whole meeting, Tuesday, October 22nd, 7 p.m. Mrs. Reach, can we have a roll call vote, please? Not a roll call vote, I'm sorry. Oh, holy moly.
That's okay. Mrs. Brancato.
Here.
Mrs. Crossan.
Present.
Ooh, Mr. Gindhart.
Here.
Mr. Godikson.
Present.
Mr. Hartline.
Present.
Mrs. Lynch.
Mrs. Lynch. You got her? There she goes.
Okay. Dr. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Martin. Mr. Sadowski.
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And if we could just give a moment of silence after the Pledge of Allegiance for all those people in Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia that are suffering from the hurricanes. That'd be great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America,
To the Republic.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. announcements? I don't have any.
I,
Oh, I'm sorry. We had an executive meeting to discuss personnel matters. We had an executive session to discuss personnel matters and security measures, yes. Superintendent?
good evening, board members and everyone. I'd like to turn it over to our communication specialist to share some of the good news around the district as part of my report. So, Ms. Link?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. I'm just going to go through some of our CSD performance spotlights in athletics, academics, and the arts. First up, our seniors at William Tennant High School benefited from peer conferencing sessions with mentors from the Panther Writing Lab. These sessions provided invaluable support as students worked on refining their college essays. You can see that up on the screen. The William Tennant High School cross-country team delivered a standout performance at the prestigious 2024 Manhattan College Invitational. Medalists included Evie Kimbrough, Ben Taylor, Max Pagano, Chase Rosenfield, Maura Kelly, Andrew Pratt, Ethan Campman, and Richard Belt. Their hard work and dedication were evident in their achievements on a competitive stage. On October 15th, the William Tennant High School Marching Band traveled to East Rutherford, New Jersey, and New York City for the U.S. Band's Ludwig Musser Classic. Competing at MetLife Stadium, the band shined among over 45 bands from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, achieving a fourth place finish in Class AA with a score of 78.7, marking their highest score of the season. Next on to our middle schools. Law College's soccer team celebrated their first win of the season with a home victory over Tohickon. I can't say that.
Topog.
Football maintained its winning streak with a strong performance against Tammany. The volleyball and field hockey teams continued their competitive action, showcasing the spirit and talent of Law College athletes. And finally, this past week was National School Lunch Week, and it's a time that we recognize the importance of healthy school meals and celebrate the hard work of our food service staff. At Davis Elementary, this kitchen staff went all out with a fun school lunch pirates theme. A huge thank you to the Davis Elementary kitchen crew for their creativity and dedication to keeping our students excited about healthy eating, and a large thank you to all of our CSD food service staff for all of your hard work and dedication. And that's all for this week.
So, board members, this is just a snapshot of much of what happens, and we want to congratulate those who are recognized and those who may not have been for all the great things you're doing in academics, athletics, and arts. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, do we have any green? I'll come get them.
Just wanted him to add more detail.
Excuse me?
Thank you very much. Just wanted him to add more detail.
I'm sorry. Mr. Mathis?
Yes.
Can you go up to the podium and speak into the microphone? You have 3 minutes. We just need to know your name, what township you belong to.
Okay. My name is Larry Mathis. I live in Warmminster Township.
Thank you.
I have 2 children that go to Willowdale. 3 minutes right now.
Yep.
2 weeks after my son turned 7, his gift was a suspension. He was removed from his class and taken to Miss Rendon. She told him he was not allowed to go back to class and that she's calling his dad. My son started crying, hyperventilating, snot dripping down his face. And then a threat assessment was done with him with Miss LaRose. She perceived my son to be such a threat to staff and students that he could not go back to get his belongings. This is all because my son got to class early, and while waiting for the rest of the class to come in, he was seen smiling and playing with another child. His thumb and finger were resembled as a sidewards L. The teacher heard, and I quote, "pew pew," while my son laughed and played with another student. He was perceived as a threat, perceived to interpretation, an explanation, or an opinion of what something means. I perceived my son's First Amendment and Eighth Amendment rights were violated. I cannot punish or discipline my child if he does nothing wrong. He didn't hurt anybody, he didn't hit anybody, he didn't threaten anybody. I cannot punish him. This is a school for learning. Suspending a first grader without a sit-down with a meet with the parents and principal to explain to their child while they're in trouble and how to avoid this in the future is how this should have been handled. This is how he would have learned what he did and not to do it again. Or if he does do it again, a second time, knowing that it's wrong, a suspension is warranted. That this goes to my child being a honor student, not only last year, but also this year. And I don't know how he could be an honor student, but also be perceived as a threat with a gun. And I think it could have been handled a lot different. I don't know why these rules were snuck in as fine print down the bottom of an email that no one really seen. It should have been bold text. It should have had its own header. It should have had its own email. If this is very important rules and we're trying to make our kids safe, this should have been brought to the attention. It should have been the first thing at the top of an email. It shouldn't be snuck down the bottom.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what school your son goes to.
Willowdale.
And can I ask who sent the email? Did the district?
It was Puma Pride. So basically, when you get Puma Pride email, it's basically a picture of the school and then a link. And then you have to click on that link.
District or from the school?
So two things. One is the school handles disciplinary action. It doesn't come from the district.
Okay.
Secondly, we really can't speak to this case in public. And
I just wanted to know
yeah.
what school it came from, that's
So,
all.
And again, I think there's probably more that needs to be looked into.
You can't speak to this in public.
Because we have federal and state laws.
Well, it's my child. I could talk about my child.
You can, I said we can't, sir. We can't.
You can't? You can't?
No, not in a public forum. We're not allowed to.
So how do we recommend that this gentleman
How does this
solve
get
this
resolved?
situation?
The gentleman can see the process is outlined. He could file a concern with the supervisor, which is Dr. Wilson, or he can ask to see me to discuss it.
Who's Dr. Wilson?
Her supervisor.
Well, I'll do my due diligence and figure it out.
But we have your information, so I guarantee you'll get a phone call to follow up. Based on, you have it on here, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if my number's on there.
No.
We have it in the system, though, correct?
Okay. Well, you probably have my
But if
wife.
you want me to write it down, I can.
I mean, I could just walk over and hand it to that gentleman. I could be.
You can if you like.
And I can introduce myself too,
You
right?
sure can,
Okay.
absolutely, yep.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wanted to speak? I don't have any other greeting cards. Thank you, Mr. Mathis.
Which means we're moving on to the approval of the agenda. Be it resolved that the Centennial School District Board of School Directors, 2.1, approves the October 22nd, 2024 Committee of the Whole agenda as per attached. Are there any corrections that are allowed, that can be made that are allowed by PA law?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hartline. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 8-0. Moving on to new business. Be it resolved that the Centennial School District Board of School Directors, 3.1, approves the personnel agenda, including retirements, resignations, authorization to employ, leaves of absence, change of status, mentor teachers, homebound tutor, and co-curricular as per attached. 3.2, approves the overnight conference request for the registration, child accounting specialist, and data assessment and PIM specialist to attend the Attendance Child Accounting Professional Association Conference in Hershey, PA, November 5th to the 8th, 2024, district cost not to exceed $3,249.83.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Clausen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Moving on to Section 4, presentations. Education Committee presentation. 4.1, the Fall 2024 Local Assessment Data Review and MTSS Update. Mr. Rutz and Mrs. Murphy.
Hi, good evening. It's good to see everybody. Tonight, myself and Ms. Murphy, kind of a split presentation. I'm going to be presenting some local assessment data for the beginning of the year fall assessments with our local data. And then I'll be handing the baton over to Ms. Murphy to connect that and discuss an update with MTSS. Let me quickly here go through mission, vision, and our belief statement. Generally, our objectives and building blocks are what they always are with these presentations, is to share data. We monitor data and making sure that all of our stakeholders know where we are with our data. We're going to be looking at local assessment data in 3 areas. One is our DIBLS, Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills for K-3, our iReady for both English and math for K-8, and our iExcel in reading and math for our high school. I do want to pause, if you don't mind. I just want to preface this with a thank you publicly to Dr. McGuire and Mr. Godekson and Mr. Ginhart. We kind of previewed this presentation in Education Committee last week, and I have to recognize that it was a thoroughly engaging and robust conversation. And as somebody who kind of geeks out about assessment and data, they were a captive audience and really was a good collaboration, so I want to thank them publicly. For DIBLS in K-3, this is our beginning of the year, our fall assessment data. What you see here is this shows that kindergarten this year for fall scored below the beginning of the year benchmark in DIBLS. Grades 1, 2, and 3 all scored above the beginning of the year benchmark. The benchmark is the orange line. What you see in the green diamond is going to be the mid-year or the winter benchmark, and you can see our progress toward that already here to start the year. This is also, I believe, officially year 4 with DIBLS, but now that we have 3 years of data, we wanted to start looking at patterns and trends in data. So we want to share out a 3-year trend line for DIBLS. This is a composite score from 2022-23, 23-24, and 24-25. These are 3 different cohorts. The white box in the middle of each bar shows that those are those kindergarten students entering that particular school year to designate that they are different cohorts of students. What you can see from this graph is that for 2 of the past 3 years, the kindergarten cohort scored above the beginning of the year national benchmark. 1 kindergarten cohort in 24-25 scored below the benchmark to start the year. Again, that's our trend line right now with kindergarten. For first grade, as you can see here, this is going to follow a similar trend here. These are 3 different cohorts. This shows that for all 3 of the past 3 years, the grade 1 cohort scored above the beginning of the year national benchmark. This consistently high beginning of the year data is proof that our evidence-based supports are working. A note on the left here was something we talked about in Education Committee, that this shows that despite the incoming kindergarten scores declining a bit in the past 3 years, our evidence-based supports during the kindergarten year are having a positive impact on student growth as they're entering grade 1 with their scores now above the benchmark. You see a similar trend line here for all 3 of the past 3 years. The 3 different grade 2 cohorts have scored above the beginning of the year national benchmark. Again, this shows that evidence-based supports during grade 1 are having a positive impact on student growth as students are entering grade 2 maintaining those early literacy composite scores above the fall national benchmark. And yes, in grade 3, this shows that for all 3 of the past 3 years, the 3 different grade 3 cohorts all scored above the beginning of the year national benchmark, so that the supports that we're putting in grade 2 are having a positive impact on student growth as students continue to maintain their scores above the fall national benchmark. Not going to read all this at you. You have this in your notes, but just a list here of the instructional supports and resources that we have put in place since the 2019-2020 school year that have led to our consistent performance above the DIBELS beginning of the year benchmarks. For iReady, we always start with the tiered pyramid. Tier 3, that's 2 or more grade levels below grade level. Tier 2, in yellow, is 1 grade level below, although ready for Tier 1 material, and Tier 1 is at or above grade level. We always share this disclaimer with the board that these are ranges, the 5 to 10, 15 to 20, 75 to 80%. They're not set in stone. iReady diagnostic assessment for reading. This is our beginning of the year. We have 74% of our students in K-8 are Tier 1 and 2 for reading, with about 26% in Tier 3 as reflected in the beginning of the year diagnostic assessment. And again, these tiers, the targets you see along the right, those are ranges. We wanted to take a look at 3-year trend lines with our reading scores in the iReady diagnostic. This graph shows that over a 3-year window, our Tier 3 numbers have decreased, while our Tier 2 has remained steady, and Tier 1 numbers have increased. In the pyramid, you'll notice both a percentage of students in those 3 tiers, and in parentheses are the number of students that this has affected, that we've moved out of Tier 3 and into Tier 1. For iReady Math, similar numbers. This graphic shows that 75% of our K-8 students are in Tiers 1 and 2 for mathematics, with about 25% in Tier 3, as reflected in the beginning of the year diagnostic assessment. And looking at this trend line over 3 years, this shows that our Tier 3 numbers have decreased, Tier 2 has remained steady, and Tier 1 numbers have increased. Again, I'm not going to read at the group, but again, below here are a list of instructional supports and resources that we have put in place since the 2019-2020 school year that have led to our consistent performance, now going on 3 years, above the iReady beginning of year benchmarks. In switching gears a bit, remember that we're using iReady in K-8, and then for the high school, we're looking at using IXL. This is our 2nd year with IXL as a diagnostic benchmark. And I wanted to preface this with some notes that we shared at Education Committee that's led to some of the great conversations. It's just important to keep this in mind that our current students in grades 9 through 11 had about 4 to 7 years of a consistent and fully standards-aligned math curriculum. Some of our students at the high school now are still those students who had four different math curricula in about a 5-year window. Our students that are in grades 9 through 11 right now had 0 years of structured literacy focused on foundational skills. Most of those students who are in our high school now were in the old Journeys program in K-5, and at that time when Journeys was brought in, foundations, programs like Foundations Integrity, which focused on foundational skills, were removed from the district, so they missed out on that. And structured literacy itself, being a state requirement, coming in, I think, another year, because it was tabled, but we've been a few years ahead of schedule with that. And they've had about 2 or 3 years of a consistent and fully standards-aligned reading and language arts curriculum, mainly Springboard ELA that we brought in 2020. Before that, there was a number of different literature programs, either coming out of Journeys or in the McDougall, which was a secondary program. And we talked about this, and it was, again, another good conversation. Just a reminder to the board that we are still dealing with this. It's a reason, but not an excuse. Remember that back when schools closed, educational research has shown that students left school that year having only learned about 70% of their reading content and 50% of their math content. And then you add that to a year of hybrid. You add that to your normal summer slide. We're still playing catch up in some respects. It is estimated that most students had about a year and a half of unfinished learning. And looking at our IXL diagnostic assessment summary to start the year, we have 2 years of IXL now. So we wanted to show you that this is a composite of reading with grades 9 through 11. Okay, so what the graphic shows is that this year's student cohort in both reading and vocab, their beginning of the year was a little bit lower. It decreased a bit, while writing and grammar mechanics from last year into this year have increased. Again, this is a composite score, so this is combining all of grades 9 through 11 for reading in these 4 categories. For math, it's a little bit different, so we disaggregate this out a little bit. We see that there's been a decrease in algebraic thinking from this year's beginning of the year diagnostic scores to last year. The algebraic thinking is a composite of both grades 9 and 11 because they're both taking algebra. So IXL assesses on algebra generally. Some students in 9th grade are in Algebra 1, 11th grade in Algebra 2. The geometry is a standalone because that's mainly 10th grade students, and you can see that we've had an increase in that from year over year. Again, these are more instructional supports and resources that we've put in place since 2019 and 2020 that have supported this implementation, and we're continuing to implement. It's only year 2 with IXL diagnostic and our use of IXL at the high school. One last thing I just want to wrap up before I hand the baton over to Ms. Murphy is that we often talk about the triangulation of data, the 3 legs of a stool for looking at student data. We always want to use multiple methods to collect data on students because that provides us the best picture of where a student is. We are obviously solid with our state level data with PSSAs and Keystones. Several years ago, we restarted Dibbles that had gone away for a little bit. We restarted that, I think, in 2018, 2019. We brought in iReady 3 years ago. We brought in IXL 2 years ago. So we now have a better picture of the district level data, the local data. What the Office of Teaching and Learning is working on now and focusing on now is classroom level data, what are called common assessments, and building those out. So we have that 3rd leg of the stool. And again, this will give us a complete student profile for where our students are for both growth and achievement.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, board members and executive cabinet. My name is Maura Murphy. I've had the privilege of meeting the Ed Policy Committee, and it's nice to meet you all and introduce myself. I am the coordinator for Student Services, MTSS. And tonight I would like to be able to talk with you and applaud the board as well as our school leaders and our teachers for the work that they have been doing for MTSS. And here are the phases of how it's been broken out out over the last 3 years. So I'm just going to focus right now on phase 3, because what we are doing is we're working on refining and evolving the systems to ensure the fidelity of supports that have been put into place over the last 2 years. What we're going to be focusing on this year is in year phase 1, we had the banners for school-wide positive behavior supports. Acronyms trip me up all the time. So PBIS is what I call it. Some people call it SHWIBs. This year, we're focusing on getting our Tier 2 badges for those banners, and we're using our support with the BCIU and the rubric that is linked here on the tier fidelity inventory. We're also talking about looking at our core meetings that are happening across all schools and making sure that we're integrating academics and behavior as well. With the focus over the last 2 years being on academics, it's not that behavior has been ignored, but it's making sure that we're marrying the two of them together to make a solid infrastructure. What I Need Win is still happening with the implementation of the programs that were purchased last year, and we're providing professional development to the teachers for those programs. These are the core meetings, and this is where I wrote down what Mr. Mathis said. So Mr. Mathis, the parent who was in the public forum, said that he wished that it could be handled a lot different, or that the school is for learning, and how can we adjust this in the future? And that's our focus with restructuring these meetings, is so that we can readjust for the future. So if you look underneath each MTSS core in the top box where it says academics, behavior, attendance, and SEAL. If we've been primarily focusing on academics, then other things fall by the wayside. So the scale gets tipped a little bit. So what we're doing right now in collaboration with Character Strong and Purposeful People is that we're giving autonomy to the schools so that they can focus on behavior trends that they're seeing across their grades or across their building. And then it can happen at a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 level, where Tier 2 will be focusing on individual students and giving them supports that they need, as well as Tier 3 as being able to differentiate at a more intense level. Here is where we are going to speak to the wonderful work, and I want to, again, applaud the work that I've been in MTSS for a few years, especially as a reading specialist. So when you see multilingual programs being used to support and building cultural literacy, cultural linguistically aligned instruction, this slide speaks to our English language development program of how we're aligning the program with MTSS. Because the vision of MTSS is so that we can remove barriers and promote academic success for students. And that's what we're doing with this triangle. Goes back to the triangle that Joe shared, where you have your red, your yellow, and your green, but this is where we're also embedding our language learners and their access scores so that we can make sure that we're differentiating support for them across various needs of intensity. Here are the goals that we're going to use for the program. Again, I'm not going to read them to you, but we're using data to inform our instruction and making sure that what we're doing is right by students. Opportunities for growth with moving forward. When I first started this position on 9/3 in September, I asked for feedback from administration so I could create my 30, 60, 90-day plan. And this is what I'm using as my compass to guide the work that I'm doing to support the evolution and refinement of Tier 1 and to monitor the progress of our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students, which Joe highlighted through his data presentation, and just to make sure that we're ensuring the fidelity of all the procedures. So those are linked there for you to take a look at, and I'm available for any questions or concerns. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think our specialists are invaluable, and the gift that MTSS does for our students by removing some of those barriers is hugely important. So thank you for that work, Mrs. Murphy. Mr. Rutz, thank you. Mr. Gabriel, all the teaching and learning folks, and of course our teachers for the effort and the focus that you've all put into over the past several years addressing academic success in Centennial. It's a testament to the administrative focus. That the goal isn't just collecting data, but it's using it in smart ways that actually move the needle forward on curricula, on the tools and strategies that we're using, and getting results after the district floundered and played hot potato with new curricula for way too long. So thank you for the work over the past several years of moving that needle.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just a comment from the Education Committee. I might as well do my report now because it's kind of tied together. There's a few items that's coming up, that we will vote on. But what is important to recognize is that the numbers look really good for first, second, and third grade, but the numbers were different for kindergarten. And we have to keep in mind that we do not, as a district, have a history with the kindergarten students.
Very good point.
Thank you. If anybody really wants to watch the Education Committee meeting, it is available on video.
I just want to, one parting comment. While we are presenting the local data tonight, we are expecting our PVAS, our PSSA and Keystone data to drop soon. We're hoping by November 1st, and we'll present that state-level data in November. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to take credit. There were people who were before me that laid this foundation. So it makes it easier for me. So kudos to the team that was before me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all you do.
And Mr. Rutz mentioned the state level. Obviously, we get initial alert as superintendents and access to look in and make any corrections, and I will tell you, because I can't really release it, because they got to go back and make any corrections, but we got a lot of green and blue again for growth. But I would say, in honor of Mr. Godikson, we got some achievement finally trickling up. So remember, he always says that, growth leads to movement and achievement, and it's finally starting to hit, which is a testament to our rise in the county rankings also. Thank you.
Operations Committee presentation. Mr. Greenwood, you're up. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm filling in for Mr. Wertman, who is on vacation, and periodically sending me incredible photos of his bike journeys in the woods. I am a jealous man. So hopefully I do serve him well in this quick update on our drinking water testing. Our mission, vision, our objectives, really making sure that we're communicating and internally as well as with the community that we serve. Our norms and expectations. Onto the notes. In 2018, there was an Act 39 was passed with the goal to prevent exposure to lead drinking water in Pennsylvania schools. That act asked us to sort of do three things. One, encourage schools, didn't mandate it, but encourage schools to test for lead in their drinking water. It says if you don't test, then you should talk about it. And then thirdly, if you implemented a plan and you had results to the negative, to fix them. All sounding pretty logical and straightforward, which you don't always get coming out of Harrisburg, but that seemed like a pretty sound plan. Our testing history in 2019, the facilities director at that time kicked off our water testing program. We had a total of 470 samples. Half of them were draw samples, which means you turn the water on, you take the sample right away. The other half of those were called flush samples, which you turn the water on, you wait 30 seconds, then you take the sample. We had 235 spigots, faucets, sinks across the district. Transportation Center, Administration Building were all tested. That initial draw resulted in 20 samples that were above the standard, which is 0.015 milligrams per liter. And for those, we looked and we went back and used the flush sample to test it again. And of that knocked out that group down to the 17. We're then below that sample. The final 3 remaining samples, we took and replaced the faucets, the outside bib hose. We labeled it not for drinking and took care of all of those situations. So we did that 3rd step where we identified a problem, we remedied the problem, and we were able to move forward. In 2020, we didn't do another test. We did include in the Operations Committee information items the board's rationale for not testing. Between 2021 and over the last 3 years, 21 to 23, we didn't test, nor did we believe the discussion met the intent of the law, right? We didn't get what we should have probably been doing. That was in part due to the pandemic underway and sort of the issuance of the pandemic health and safety plans. And we talked a lot about water fountains. We closed a lot of water fountains. We were doing a lot of things. So there was a lot of sort of crossover at that time. We also had turnover within that facilities role. We had a long-term facilities director step aside. We hired a new person, and that person left in the end of 2023. So we've had some turnover in this role, and we believe we sort of missed the opportunity to provide that specific direction to the community. And while we're not required to test annually, due to the inconsistency in prior years, we decided this year, with Mr. Wortman's guidance, that we would run another test. And at that point, Mr. Wortman reached out to an organization to have that test begun and taken care of. In that, we had 85 samples from across the district, looking at all sinks, anything that would, any fountains, sinks, anywhere that could, food, cafeterias, and wash sinks, we checked all of them. And these are the results. The grades that you get is either a no detection grade, which is equal to, is less than or equal to 0.004 milligrams per liter. A pass rating is between that 0.005 and 0.014. Understanding that 0.015 is the failure point. And a fail is anything greater than equal to or greater than that 0.015. Our samples came back, and what we had initially is 7 of the first 85 samples were delayed in getting to the testing facility, so that could jeopardize the results of that test. So we have flushed those tests and are retesting those 7. Of the remaining 78 samples, 77 of them returned, 77 of the 78 returned that no detection, right? So that means they were equal to or less than 0.004. Of that 77, 75 were less than 0.001. So it was another measure that they said no detection, and then they gave you that range it was in, and it was less than 0.001. One test returned a pass designation with a rating of a 0.009 milligrams per liter. So that's sort of a summary of what we found. All of our tests were either no detection, certainly the majority. We had that one pass. This is in line with our previous testing, so we are happy about that. Next steps is that we will address that 0.9, that one faucet, and we'll make sure that comes out and is replaced, just to maintain our high standards around that. And we will continue to move forward. At the bottom, we talk about, process and procedures. So this has now been logged as a process within our facilities team to either share their findings in completed tests or just have the opportunity to have that discussion around clean drinking water and lead-free. And we will look to retest on a regularly established basis. The other slides in the panel just show, you can see the details of those, sink by sink, faucet by faucet, and see the scores that they came out to be. Those will all be in your packets.
So just for the board's clarity and information, in my meeting with Mr. Wortman, while our numbers, as you can tell, are pretty low, and which would be a reason why you don't have to test annually, but you should just announce that. He concurred with my request that even though they're low, and given the current status of our buildings with less likelihood right now, that we will still establish, even though we're not required to establish a cycle to still test anyway on off years or every third year or something like that, just to get a full test no matter what. But you can see our numbers are really, really low.
So the one question for the one faucet that is getting replaced, it's still passed though, is that accurate?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
We just believe
Passed, right?
we want it to be in alignment with the highest standard. So even though it passed, we want the no detection rating if we can get it.
Perfect,
So that
thank
was
you.
that one was .009, the pass mark is .015 and below.
It's that abundance of caution and
Yep.
being higher expectation for the quality of water that we provide.
Thank you.
Mr. Goddickson, you have already given your report.
Well, I actually have a couple more comments, so, because one of the pieces that, we discussed and then reviewed during the Education Committee was that the PSSA testing and Keystone tests were shared with the families on October 9th or sent out on October 9th. Now, we have to keep in mind that those tests were done back in April. So it is a long lag time from, the testing to receiving the results that takes place. And we are almost like a month and a half into the new school year before we can really use that data. The other thing we reviewed and looked at was the library book list that we are approving tonight. We did make some minor changes to that list. And our next committee meeting is on November the 13th.
Mr. Goddickson?
Yes.
If I can piggyback on your comment about the lag, that even highlights why we have one of those three legs is our local diagnostic, because if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have any information of how students are progressing or not. So that's, again, a question that's often come up about our local data. That's informative data that helps give information to change what we're doing. Else we have once a year, 2 months into the school year, and no information about our kids and how they're doing or not doing.
And this is not due to the district. This is the state that is holding that information back.
Thank you, Mr. Goddickson. Mr. Hartline?
Okay, so Finance Committee met. The presentation also is online. You're going to notice a recurring theme here that our committee meetings are now being digitalized, taped, and then placed back on our website so that people can go back and view them at their leisure. There are no items for approval tonight, but there were 3 items that were the main subject of our discussion. One of them is the Pennsylvania Liquid Assets Fund. We are still managing to receive fairly high returns on our investments, just a little south of 5%, which is doing incredible. So we are continuing to head towards our goal that we had set of a $3 million investment income this year. So we are still online with that. It's anybody's guess what the Fed is going to do to see how our yields change in the ensuing months. You hear everything from no change to a half a point, so we'll be waiting with bated breath to see exactly what comes of it. The Act 1 basis amount has been set for the year, and I believe it is 4%. Am I correct on that? Yeah, 4% this year. So that is the maximum Act 1 that a tax raise can be done, excluding any exclusions that we may miss to apply for on a state level. Piggybacking on that is the budget timeline, keeping in mind that our budget timeline is based upon the primary in the ensuing year. So our budget timeline is based on the primary that will be held in 2025. So the dates shift a little bit every year. We have a little bit more time this year than we did last year for the preliminaries, but obviously the final budget is due no later than June 30th. So the Finance Committee is already starting to work on that. There were some parameters that were set up and questions that were answered regarding the budgeting process, where we're looking at, what type of increases we're looking at with contractual obligations that we already have regarding salaries, benefits package. We're still waiting on the second open renewal or open enrollment for the new healthcare plan. So that's supposed to close November 1st. Was that the date? I'm getting a yes over there. So hopefully by the second meeting in November, we'll have some hard numbers as to what type of savings, if any, we're going to capture there, keeping in mind that the average health insurance plan in the country went up between 18 and 20% this year. So even if we see a decrease in some of the expenditures that may have gotten eaten up by the fact that inflation just is killing all of us. I think that's pretty much it as far as what we went over in the meeting. Am I missing anything, Mr. Goodison?
I think you did well.
All right, thank you. And like I said, there are no items for approval tonight, so we shall move on. I do have a question. The educational approval items, were we supposed to read those? I have 3 here for...
They're coming up.
Okay. That's just, okay, great. All right, I'm ahead of the schedule then. Thank you. All right.
Mr. Ginhart, the Operations Committee, please.
Thank you. We met on October 11th. The big item discussed was the lead testing, so I'd like to thank Mr. Greenwood for giving that presentation and saving me from having to do it and doing a great job with it. Thank you. We had an update on some of the work being done around the district, repainting of the Klinger football post, and a couple of good items, a new ADA swing at McDonald and an ADA sidewalk extension at Davis, so it allows the ADA students to be dropped off and brought into the building a lot easier. And the final item is going to be being brought forward for approval, and I'd like to thank Mr. Wortman for this. It's a contract for purchasing uniforms and items needed for transportation. We do that on a routine basis. He was able to get us a contract that's going to save us about almost $3,500 by doing the contract. So very proactive, good work on his part, and I appreciate that. And I also like to thank Mr. Wortman and the administration for getting proactive on the lead testing too, because that's very important. Next meeting will be November 15th at 11.
All right, coming back to the Education Committee service, we do not have any further information to be presented tonight, but we have 3 items for approval. Do we want to move them together? Seems like we can. Be it resolved that the Centennial School District Board of School Directors, 6.2A, approves the purchase of library books for Davis Elementary, McDonald Elementary, Worldale Elementary, Klinger Middle, and Log Middle School, and William Tennant High School. Libraries, district cost not to exceed $17,562.96. 6.2B approves the addition of Sandra Vert as the SEAL Inclusive Practice Liaison at Klinger Middle School, district cost not to exceed $1,687.50. 6.2C approves the affiliation agreement between Widener University and the Centennial School District for students in the counseling program, no cost to the district.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hartline. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 8-0. I assume Lynch is still there.
All right, so like I said, pretty much everything that I discussed as what we went over in the committee meeting is part of the items presented for information tonight. I do have a request from finance. If we could get at the next finance meeting, some type of a breakdown on the capital plan projects, what we have, what we projected the budget, the amount would be versus what the actual expenditure was on the items that obviously we've already done. The ones that we haven't done, obviously we can't do yet. So that we have an idea of where we stand projected versus actual for our upcoming budget as well. And then for tonight, like I had said, there are no items for approval, so thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Mark, do you want to do items?
Sure.
Want to read that?
Yeah. Items presented for information, there's none. One item for approval tonight, 8.2, be it resolved that the Centennial School District Board of School Directors, 8.2A, approves a 3-year agreement with UniFirst Corporation for uniform rental services for the Transportation Department. District cost not to exceed $11,271. The 3-year agreement saves the district $3,495. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes 8-0. Thank you.
Okay, board comments, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to brag about our kids a little bit here.
Sure.
First thing is, this Friday is senior recognition night. So 7 o'clock, halftime at the football game. Football players, cheerleaders, and marching band will all be having their senior recognition that night. It's really pretty fun if you get the opportunity and you're not already predisposed to something. Like it was said earlier, our marching band placed 4th at MetLife, and they actually placed 3rd at a state competition last weekend, and their score actually increased over the MetLife score. So we do have that going on. This coming Saturday, the CEF, Centennial Education Foundation, is having its puzzle competition. Right now, there are 26 teams. Registration for teams ends on Thursday, so you still have an opportunity to get in. There are a number of raffle baskets. I'd like to thank the board. We put together a pretty nice raffle basket. My gracious wife was able to put it together for us, so it is a really nice raffle basket with some decent gift cards in it, so thank you to the generosity of the board. I greatly appreciate it. And then last but least for me is Celebration of Bands is coming up on November 5th, Saturday. It starts, I believe, at noon or 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock? You got them, thank you. Gates open at 1, and then there are, to date, I believe 14 bands that are participating. I think they may be still waiting to hear from a few. It is a pretty cool competition. Please stop by, buy a band booster ad book. The money goes to the band association, and if you like marching band music, it is quite a show to watch. So, thank you.
Mike,
That is Saturday.
The 9th?
Saturday, September 2nd.
Weekend.
Next weekend. Next weekend. Not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. And this is actually the 28th one that we are having. November 2nd. Yes. Saturday, November 2nd.
Mike, where is the puzzle competition being held?
Puzzle competition is at the high school. And there is if you just want to go over and watch, there is a small entrance fee. Let me see if I can bring it up on the... $10. Yeah, $10 if you wish to come in, and you can certainly come in and buy raffle tickets and put stuff in the bags for the raffle baskets.
Okay.
They raised, already 2 of our members raised over $400 in purchasing of raffle tickets to date.
The time of this?
That is, let me just bring it up to be safe.
I'm sorry.
Centennial
Thought it would be good
Education
for the community to
Foundation.
know.
12 to 3?
12 to 3.
12 to 3.
Thank you.
Now, they're saying that the quickest that anybody has done these puzzles in is some ridiculous time of like 30-some minutes. Most of the time is an hour or two to complete the puzzle. Teams of 2 or 3, team registration fee is $60 per team. And like I said, registration is still open on CEF's website, so you can go there and register as well.
So if somebody just wants to come in and buy tickets for the raffles, they have to pay the $10 to get in?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay,
And then again, all money goes towards the Centennial Education Foundation,
thank you.
like normal.
Mr. Sadowski?
Thank you. Quickly, just because I believe this will fall before our next meeting. Shortly after that, Friday, November 8th and Saturday, November 9th will be the William Tennant Fall Play that the Drama Club's working on right now. Lots of 80s references in this one. No spoilers, though. So, should be fun.
Mr. Godekson?
Well, we actually received some really great news this afternoon at Millbox Technical School. They received a $1.4 million grant to replace and improve the HVAC system. And it was thankful from Kristen Marcel, our state representative, and the senator, Frank Ferry. They were very huge support to get this grant in place. There are several other grants that's still in place for MBIT, so this is great news and a game changer that hopefully will save Centennial money as well.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Lynch?
Thank you. Would you tell Mr. Goddess that I am here and I am listening intently? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I do have something to say, I'm sorry. I'd like to speak about the school board meeting of October 8th. I want to apologize for the shenanigans that transpired that evening during community comments. For those who need reminded or assured, all community members have the right to speak during community comments without fear of intimidation. It is the right of every community member of this district to have 3 minutes to speak, express their opinion, or comment on any topic. I would like to address the superintendent's comment to the Patch and the Bucks County Herald that the community members' comment appeared planned by this board. I assure you that I, nor any of the quote-unquote "four" planned anything. As mentioned in both articles, the superintendent knew what I knew from the green paper that was filled out. School safety, that's all we knew. That's all we knew. We both read it together. We are not always going to agree with the community comment, but as elected officials, we owe them the respect of allowing them to comment within their 3 minutes. I want to apologize for any ill feelings any community member may have had from that meeting. I encourage you to attend school board meetings, ask questions, advocate for your children, and to speak up when you feel something is not as it should be. None of us are perfect, and most, if not all of us, are open to hearing what you have to say. We are elected officials up here who have been voted into these positions by the community members in the communities we live in. The superintendent works for the board, and we work for you, the members of the community. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing so many of you at future school board meetings. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
One more thing, don't forget to vote November 5th.